Right now, something is happening inside the British royal family that could destroy everything. And I'm not exaggerating. What I'm about to share with you is so explosive that people are genuinely asking if we're witnessing the end of the monarchy itself. Before I go any further, you need to hit that subscribe button immediately because this situation is changing by the hour, and if you're not subscribed, you're going to miss the next bombshell that drops. I'm tracking every single development, and trust me when I say this story gets worse every single day. Let me ask you something crucial before we dive in. When does protecting your family cross the line into being complicit in their crimes? Think about that question as we go through this, because by the end, you're going to have to decide where you stand. Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Here's what just happened. Yesterday, King Charles was walking through Clio, doing his royal duties, smiling for the cameras, when suddenly someone in the crowd started shouting at him. But this wasn't just general heckling. This person was demanding answers to the questions everyone has been asking for years. The heckler shouted directly at the king, asking how long he'd known about Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. How long had he been protecting Andrew from facing prosecution? The king kept walking. He didn't answer. He couldn't answer. But here's the shocking part. Within hours, everything changed. That same evening, King Charles released a statement that has left royal watchers absolutely stunned. The King of England just publicly announced that he's ready to support a police investigation into his own brother. Let me read you exactly what the palace said. While specific claims and questions are for him to address, if we are approached by Thames Valley Police, we stand ready to support them as you would expect. Do you understand what just happened? The king didn't deny the allegations. He didn't defend Andrew. He basically threw him under the bus. This is unprecedented. This breaks every single rule of how the royal family operates. They never, ever turn on each other publicly. Never. The fact that Charles did this tells you exactly how terrified they are right now. But wait, because it gets even more interesting. Just before Charles released that statement, William and Catherine put out their own statement. The timing here is absolutely critical. The Prince and Princess of Wales saw which way this was going, and they wanted everyone to know they had nothing to do with the cover-up. They're protecting themselves. They're distancing themselves from Charles and from Andrew as fast as they possibly can. That should tell you everything you need to know about how serious this actually is. Now, there's one person who's been trying to expose all of this for years while everyone else looked the other way. His name is Andrew Loney, and he wrote an unauthorized biography called The Rise and Fall of the House of York. This man spent 5 years, let that sink in, 5 entire years trying to get access to government files about Andrew's time as a trade envoy. 5 years of being blocked, threatened, denied access to royal interviews, and facing legal pressure to stop his investigation. Everything he's been warning people about is now exploding into public view, and the palace can't hide it anymore. Loney doesn't hold back when he talks about what the palace is doing right now. He calls it optics, not actual transparency. And honestly, when you look at the facts, he's absolutely right. The palace says they'll cooperate with police, but that's completely different from actually coming forward and explaining why they protected Andrew for the last 15 years. 15 years. That's not a mistake. That's not an oversight. That's a calculated, deliberate, sustained effort to shield someone from facing the consequences of his actions. According to Loney, the palace has known about these allegations for a very long time. They didn't deal with the Andrew problem when they should have. They're only dealing with it now because the king is getting heckled in public, because social media refuses to let this story disappear, because ordinary people are demanding answers and they won't stop until they get them. Let me break down exactly what Andrew is accused of, because these aren't minor issues. These are serious allegations that go to the heart of how the monarchy operates and whether it deserves to continue existing. First, there are financial irregularities. Andrew was allegedly sharing confidential information while working in a taxpayer-funded position. He was essentially a civil servant, paid by the British people, and he was allegedly using that position for personal gain. If the government prosecutes regular people like Peter Mandelson for similar issues, then Andrew has to face the same standard. There cannot be one set of rules for royals and another set for everyone else. That's not justice. Second, and this is where it becomes truly disturbing, there's clear evidence that women were being trafficked to Andrew. And where were they being trafficked to? Royal palaces. buildings that belong to the British taxpayer, places that are supposed to represent British values and British heritage. These locations were allegedly being used as venues for sex trafficking. Think about what that means. Think about the absolute depravity of using public buildings, funded by ordinary people's taxes, for these purposes. Third, we have the national security nightmare. According to Lowney, Andrew got himself involved with Russian intelligence and Chinese intelligence. Stop and think about that for a second. A senior member of the British royal family, someone who had access to state secrets, who attended high-level government meetings, who met with world leaders. This person was potentially compromised by hostile foreign intelligence services. This isn't just a family scandal. This is a threat to British national security. And here's something that's going to make your blood absolutely boil. Lowney revealed yesterday that Andrew was putting massages on the taxpayer bill, and these expenses were being approved by senior government officials. Your money, if you're British, your tax money, was being used to pay for services that everyone knows weren't legitimate massages. Everyone knew what was really happening, and they approved the payments anyway. This was happening with the full knowledge and approval of senior officials at the UK Trade and Investment Department. Lowney tried to speak with former heads of UKTI for his book. Want to guess how many of them agreed to talk? 0. Not a single one. None of them would speak to him. None of them have ever spoken publicly about what they witnessed. Why? Because they know exactly what was going on, and they're all part of the cover-up. They're all protecting themselves. Diplomats were allegedly sending prostitutes to Andrew's hotel rooms when he was traveling abroad on official government business. This is what British diplomats were doing with their time and with taxpayer resources. The scale of this is absolutely massive. Andrew didn't operate alone. He couldn't have. He was part of an enormous network, and that network includes people who are still in positions of power today, people who are still making decisions about what information gets released and what stays buried, people who are still protecting themselves and protecting Andrew. This is why Lowney is calling for a full parliamentary investigation. This can't be handled with a carefully crafted palace statement. This requires transparency. This requires people testifying under oath. This requires documents being unsealed. This requires the truth finally coming out. Here's the question that everyone is asking right now. Could this actually bring down King Charles? Could this force him to abdicate? Could this end his reign before it's barely even started? And Lowney's answer is yes. He genuinely believes this could force Charles from the throne. Let that sink in for a moment. We're not talking about a scandal that will blow over in a few weeks. We're talking about something so catastrophic that it could end a king's reign. The monarchy has survived scandals before. We've seen divorces, affairs, embarrassing photos, leaked phone conversations. But this is fundamentally different. This involves alleged criminal behavior. This involves national security breaches. This involves a cover-up that goes all the way to the top of the institution. The late Queen Elizabeth protected Andrew. She turned away people who came to her with complaints. King Charles has known about this. They've tried to shut down this story for years through legal threats against journalists, through pressure tactics, through denying access to anyone who dared ask uncomfortable questions. And here's what makes this even more explosive. Some people are already saying the only way to save the monarchy is for Charles to abdicate immediately and pass the throne to William. They see this as the only chance for a clean break. William, by every account we have, is not implicated in any of this. He's actually tried to intervene, but there's a hierarchy in the royal family, and when you're not the king, there's only so much you can do. The responsibility for this cover-up lies with Charles and with the late Queen. Let's talk about King Charles himself for a moment, because there are serious questions about his own conduct too. Remember when images surfaced years ago showing Charles receiving £3 million in cash, literally in plastic shopping bags, from donors across the Middle East? That actually happened. That's documented fact, and it raises massive questions about how the royal family handles money, about their financial relationships with foreign donors, about what obligations might come attached to those donations, about what promises might have been made in exchange for those bags of cash. Lowney believes, and frankly the evidence backs him up, that William represents the possibility of starting fresh. William seems to understand that the monarchy needs to fundamentally change. He knows it needs to be more transparent, more accountable, more in touch with modern values. He's made public statements that show he's aware of what the public is thinking, that he knows the old ways of doing things are dead and buried. But the question is, can the monarchy survive long enough for William to take over? Or will the damage from this scandal be so catastrophic that by the time Charles is forced out, the entire institution is beyond saving? There's another dimension to this that connects to much larger questions about how the British establishment handles abuse and exploitation. When you look at the lack of serious inquiry into grooming gangs, when you look at how allegations against powerful people routinely get buried or ignored, you start to see a disturbing pattern. The royal family covering up for Andrew isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a broader culture where protecting institutions matters more than protecting victims, where the reputation of powerful people is always prioritized over justice for the powerless, where your connections and your last name determine whether you face consequences or whether you get protected. Loney makes an absolutely crucial point when he brings up Peter Mandelson. If the government is going to prosecute Mandelson for misconduct in public office, then the exact same standard has to apply to Andrew. Actually, the standard should be even higher for Andrew. Why? Because he's a member of the royal family, because he was representing Britain on the world stage, because he had access to confidential state information and government resources, because he was supposed to be setting an example. But what we're seeing instead is a two-tiered justice system where your surname and your connections determine whether you face any consequences at all. The Metropolitan Police has serious questions to answer too. Why has it taken a private prosecution to get them to do anything? Why have they been so incredibly slow to investigate allegations that would have resulted in immediate arrests if they involved literally anyone else? Is it because Andrew is a royal? Is it because there's been pressure from above to let this quietly go away? These aren't conspiracy theories. These are legitimate questions based on observable facts about how this case has been handled from the very beginning. And what about those government files on Andrew's time as trade envoy? Loney spent 5 years trying to access them, 5 years of filing requests, submitting appeals, getting denials. What could possibly be in those files that's so sensitive it needs to remain sealed? What are they protecting? We have a pretty good idea now, but those files are still locked away. That tells you absolutely everything you need to know about whether this is really about transparency or whether it's just about managing public relations and protecting the institution. Here's something particularly chilling. When someone asked Loney whether he could see Andrew actually going to jail, Loney said no, not because Andrew isn't guilty, not because there isn't enough evidence, but because Loney believes Andrew will do what's called a midnight flit. He'll flee to a country that doesn't have an extradition treaty with Britain, possibly with help from the royal family, and justice will never be served. He won't face any penalty for his behavior whatsoever. Think about what that means. We're not even hoping for justice anymore. We're expecting that a man accused of serious crimes will be actively helped to escape by his own family, by the very institution that's supposed to represent British values and British justice. This is where we are. This is what the monarchy has become. An institution so obsessed with protecting itself that it's willing to help a potential criminal flee rather than let the legal system run its course. The pressure from social media is what's finally forcing these changes, and that's both encouraging and deeply depressing. It's encouraging because it proves that ordinary people still have power, that public pressure can force even the most protected institutions to respond. But it's depressing because it shouldn't take a massive social media campaign to get the royal family to do the right thing. They should have done the right thing 15 years ago when they first learned about Andrew's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. You know what really strikes me about all of this? The massive gap between what the monarchy claims to be and what it actually is. The entire justification for the monarchy's continued existence in a modern democracy is that it supposedly represents something noble, something above the messiness of politics and self-interest. The royals are supposed to embody duty, service, dignity. They're supposed to be examples to the nation. They're supposed to represent the best of British values. But what we're actually seeing is an institution that operates by completely different rules, an institution that protects its own members, even when they've allegedly committed serious crimes, an institution that values its reputation more than truth or justice, an institution that will do absolutely anything to survive, even if it means betraying every value it claims to represent. And the tragic thing is, There are members of the royal family who genuinely try to live up to that ideal. William seems to understand what's at stake. He's tried to modernize, to make the monarchy more relevant, more accountable, more connected to ordinary people's lives. But he's constrained by the older generation. He's constrained by structures and hierarchies that make meaningful change almost impossible. Even if he wanted to throw Andrew to the wolves, he couldn't. There's a pecking order, and he's not at the top of it, not yet. The heckler who confronted King Charles and Cleo asked one simple question. How long have you known? That's what this entire scandal comes down to. Not whether Andrew did what he's accused of, because at this point the evidence is overwhelming. The question is, what did the royal family know? When did they know it? And what did they do about it? And based on everything we're seeing, the answers appear to be, they knew everything. They knew it for years. And they did absolutely nothing except try to cover it up. This is exactly why Lowney and other investigators are calling for a full parliamentary investigation. The palace cannot investigate itself. We've already seen that the Met Police isn't willing or able to properly investigate a royal. The only way we're going to get real answers is if Parliament steps in and demands them. Subpoena witnesses, release classified documents, put people under oath and force them to tell the truth under penalty of perjury. It's the only way this ends with anything resembling justice or accountability. But will that actually happen? Honestly, I'm not optimistic. The British establishment has shown time and time again that it protects its own. We've seen it with grooming gang scandals. We've seen it with financial corruption. We've seen it with abuse in institutions ranging from the BBC to the church to children's homes. The pattern is always exactly the same. Deny everything, delay the investigation, deflect blame, hope that eventually people lose interest and move on to the next story. And unfortunately, it usually works because most scandals don't have the staying power to overcome institutional resistance. This one might be different, though. The Epstein connection is too big, too international, too well documented. The social media pressure is absolutely relentless and shows no signs of stopping. And most importantly, people are making connections between this scandal and much larger questions about privilege, power, and accountability in British society. This isn't just about one royal behaving badly anymore. It's about a system that enables and protects that behavior. It's about institutions that value their own survival over truth and justice. It's about whether we're really a country where everyone is equal under the law, or whether that's just a pleasant fiction we tell ourselves. What happens in the next few weeks is going to define the monarchy for generations. If Charles abdicates and William takes over, it might be enough to save the institution, a fresh start, a new era, a visible break between the old ways and new accountability. But if Charles clings to power, if the cover-up continues, if Andrew is allowed to flee justice with his family's help, then I genuinely think we're looking at the beginning of the end for the British monarchy as we know it. The British people are patient, they're respectful of tradition, they have genuine affection for the institution of the monarchy, but they're not stupid. They can see what's happening. They can see the double standards. They can see the cover-ups. They can see how reputation is being prioritized over responsibility. And there's only so much of that they'll tolerate before they start asking much harder questions about whether they really need a monarchy at all, whether this institution actually serves any useful purpose in the 21st century, or whether it's just an expensive, scandal-ridden relic that needs to be retired. So here we are watching this play out in real time. Every single day brings new revelations, new pressure, new questions that demand answers. The palace is in full crisis mode, desperately trying to manage a situation that's spiraling completely beyond their control. Social media won't let this die. Journalists like Lowney won't stop asking uncomfortable questions. Victims deserve justice, and the British people deserve to know the complete truth about what happened, who knew about it, and why absolutely nothing was done for so long. Before we finish, I need you to do something for me. Actually, do it for yourself. Hit that subscribe button right now because I promise you, this story is nowhere near over. More revelations are coming. More pressure is building. More decisions are going to have to be made. And I'm going to be covering every single development as it happens. If you're not subscribed, you're going to miss the next bombshell, and trust me, there are more coming. Hit that like button if you believe that no one, absolutely no one, should be above the law, regardless of their title, their family connections, or their place in the social hierarchy. Justice should be blind. It should apply equally to everyone, from the homeless person on the street to the king in his palace. And drop a comment right now telling me what you think should happen next. Should Charles abdicate? Should Andrew face criminal prosecution? Can the monarchy actually survive this, or are we watching its final days? I genuinely want to hear what you think, because this affects all of us, whether we're British or not. This is about accountability. This is about justice. This is about whether our institutions exist to serve the people or just to protect the powerful. The monarchy is standing at a crossroads right now. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks are going to echo for decades. Those decisions will determine whether this institution survives into the next generation or whether it collapses under the weight of its own corruption and hypocrisy. Here's what I'm going to be covering in the next video, and you're not going to believe this. I've got information about specific documents that are about to be unsealed, and what's in them is going to shock you even more than what we've covered today. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss it. Stay informed, stay engaged. Demand better from the people and institutions that claim to serve you. Don't let them wait this out. Don't let them hope you forget. Keep asking questions. Keep demanding answers. Keep insisting that justice matters more than reputation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.